section of material, animal nutrition. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different diets, different types of nutrients. And so the first set of categories that we have, these should sound pretty familiar to you. These should be words that you may have heard before. Herbivore, carnivore, and omnivore. So at the top right here, we have an example of an herbivore, that's just a giraffe, that are going to be feeding only on plant materials, things like leaves, flowers, fruit. And then we have carnivores. Carnivores, and in this case of a feline, felines are obligate carnivores, which means that they only eat meat. And then you have examples like bears, and bears are omnivores. And omnivores can have a mixed diet of both plant and meat-based foods. And this can apply to also some of the smaller organisms that we've discussed over the course of this semester, including insects. So you have some insects that are only going to be eating plant material. You have things like mantids that consume other insects, so they would be considered carnivores. And then you have things like ants that can play both roles. They can eat plant material, they can also eat insects. So they can be considered omnivores. So when it comes to diets are going to have to provide a certain set of things, such as chemical energy, which make up the organic building blocks for running the cells, producing ATP, and giving lots of energy to the body. But the bodies are also, and the diets are going to need essential nutrients. So essential nutrients are required by the cells and can only be obtained through dietary sources. So the body can't make it on their own. They have to be consumed. So deficiencies in essential nutrients can result in deformities, disease, and sometimes even death if you are lacking in some essential nutrients. Undernutrition is going to be when a diet does not provide enough or adequate amounts of chemical energy. So undernutrition is when you do have some resemblance of a diet, but it is not enough and does not have enough of the materials that you need to adequately run your body. So undernourished individuals will often use stored up fat and carbohydrates. They can break down the body's own proteins, so breaking down your own proteins. You can lose muscle mass. Protein deficiencies can cause some brain and neural issues, and there can be irreversible damage done to the body, again, possibly resulting in death. So undernutrition is extremely dangerous. So when it comes to essential nutrients, we have 4 different classes. The first class we're going to talk about is essential amino acids. There are 20 amino acids necessary for animals to run their basic functions. About half can be synthesized from molecules in the diet. So those are going to be 10 amino acids that are going to be coming from the diet. The remaining half are essential amino acids, meaning that they must be ingested. They have to be consumed from food resources. We can get this from meat, eggs. We're going to get lots of proteins from there. Cheeses, those can provide the amino acids, and often these are called complete proteins. Plant proteins are called incomplete proteins. So this is something that can happen when you are lacking some of those essential amino acids. We have an amino acid deficiency here on the left. So this is an unhealthy individual. And then this is when they are getting enough of those essential amino acids. And you can see the difference in the quality of the coat when the amino acids are lacking. Next, we have essential fatty acids. Essential fatty acids are obtained from diet, including unsaturated fatty acids, so fatty foods. Animals can synthesize most fatty acids they need. And when you have something like an essential fatty acid deficiency, so this is an experiment seen in rats, it resulted in kind of this deformity and scaling on the tail. So they are not getting enough of those essential fatty acids, resulting in some morphological changes to the body. Next, we have vitamins. So like everyone always says, make sure you get your vitamins and minerals. Well, vitamins are first, and we'll talk about minerals next. Vitamins are organic molecules that are required in smaller amounts. There's 13 vitamins that are essential for human beings, and there's 2 different categories of those, fat-soluble and water-soluble. When we have a vitamin deficiency, it can result in vision problems, coat quality problems. So here, this is a vitamin A deficiency in a rat experiment, and vitamin A is very important for our eyes. So this rat here on the left has vitamin A deficiency, and you can see how it's affected the eye, and then this is a healthy individual here. Vitamin C deficiencies. Vitamin C deficiency in humans can cause scurvy. That's why pirates that were stuck on ships for so long, or sailors that were stuck on ships, they would sometimes get scurvy because they didn't have fresh fruits and vegetables. And so you can kind of tell that this individual here on the left has a much thicker, firmer, brighter coat compared to his companion on the right. So here are the vitamin requirements for humans. We have water soluble on the top, and then we have fat soluble on the bottom. And so vitamin B, lots of different types of vitamin B. Vitamin C is also one of those water soluble ones. We get those in citrus fruits, broccoli, tomatoes. But you can see that vegetables are pretty much showing up on all of these vitamin sources. Legumes, peanuts, whole grains, grains, vegetables, nuts, grains, vegetables. So pretty much what I'm trying to tell you here is make sure you eat your vegetables and have some grains and fruit in your diet, because that is where you are getting all of those essential vitamins that you need. Next, we have the minerals. Minerals are simple inorganic nutrients, usually required in pretty small amounts. And if you do ingest large amount of minerals, that can actually cause some problems. You don't want to have too much mineral intake. So the essential minerals are going to be things like calcium, phosphorus, sulfur, potassium. So a whole bunch of minerals that we need. And look at that, vegetables, grains, protein, vegetables, grains, vegetables. So again, eat your vegetables, eat your grains, have some fruit. That way you have a balanced diet and you're getting all those vitamins and minerals. For digestive compartments, and by compartmentalizing, what we're talking about is kind of making sure that certain parts of the body are carrying out specific functions. So this compartment does this function, that compartment does that function, etc. So digestive compartments. Compartmentalizing reduces the risk of digesting one's own cells. We've talked about different types of digestion before in class, especially when I was talking about sponges a couple of lectures ago. I talked about intracellular digestion. So intracellular digestion is when food particles are engulfed through phagocytosis. So that is when food particles are absorbed into a vacuole, a food particle vacuole. And so that is called phagocytosis. So food particles engulfed through phagocytosis uses food vacuoles exclusively for all stages of digestion. So here we have a food particle through phagocytosis. It comes into the cell, and now we have our food vacuole. We have some lysosome-containing digestive enzymes. So those enzyme vacuoles are going to merge with our food vacuole, and then it's going to slowly digest those food particles for energy. So phagocytosis leads to the formation of food vacuole, fusion with lysosome that contains the digestive enzymes, and then digestion occurs. Absorption of the monomers across the vacuole membrane. So the vacuole membrane, which means the membrane surrounding the vacuole, so that's this barrier. So absorption is going to happen across that vacuole membrane. So the energy from that food particle is going to be passed between that membrane. Exocytosis, so that's exiting the cell, of the non-digested material. So this is the waste, that's the waste product. So here it was with our sponge. Like I said, we did talk about how this happened with our sponges. We had our choanocyte, phagocytosis of food particles that were brought down from the collar, passed through the choanocyte, and then into the amoebocyte, which did the digesting intracellularly, and then the waste exited from the other side of the cell. So extracellular digestion means outside of the cell, so the breakdown of food particles outside of the cell. Some organisms are going to have a gastrovascular cavity. This is an example of one of those nidiriads. This is a hydra. So this also includes the groups for sea anemones and for our sea jellies. So they all have gastrovascular cavities, function in digestion, and distribution to cells of the products of digestion. So the gastrovascular cavity conducts the digestion, and then those products will be absorbed into the cells. In animals with simple body plans, only opening that functions as a mouth and an anus. So the gastrovascular cavity is kind of an everything hole. It is where things enter and where things exit. A gastrovascular cavity has a single opening through which food is ingested and waste is excreted. So again, that's called incomplete digestion. So here's an example of a simple anemone or a hydra. And the gastrovascular cavity is this purple space in here. And same with our sea jelly, but the mouth is on the other end. And then here's the gastrovascular cavity. Okay, so speaking of incomplete and complete digestion. Incomplete digestion has a single opening, a mouth or pharynx, and it's used for both ingestion and excretion. It can be a mix of digestion in the gastrovascular cavity and intracellular digestion. Contrastly, for complete digestion, the digestive tract has both a mouth and an anus. This is strictly extracellular digestion within the intestines. So the first time we see that is when we introduced our nematodes for our roundworms, where we had a separate mouth and anus. So complete digestion passes through the whole shebang. So the surface area of the digestive tract is larger to increase nutrient absorption. So the more infolding you have of that intestine, the more digestion is going to be happening. So there's 4 main stages when it comes to food processing: ingestion, digestion, absorption, and elimination. So first, ingestion. Ingestion is the act of eating. You can be different types of an eater. You can be a suspension feeder, a substrate feeder, a fluid feeder, or a bulk feeder. So a suspension feeder are going to be things like whales. This is a baleen whale. So this here, this giant, tooth, more or less like a tooth-like or comb-like tooth structure. It's called a baleen. Things like whale sharks, which are also filter feeders. And then even these small creatures that we covered a few class periods again with that lophophore. We had heard that term. The lophophore is a structure used for filter feeding. So these are all different types of suspension feeders where they are filter feeding out of their aquatic ecosystem. So they are filtering the water. Substrate feeders are going to be things that eat their substrates. So very intuitive type of name. And in this case, this example here, we have a caterpillar and it lives on this leafy substrate and then it gradually eats away at the substrate that it's living on. So this is a substrate feeder. Fluid feeders, a great example of that are things like mosquitoes that are sucking blood for fluid, but this also includes things like bees and butterflies that are feeding on nectar. So those are also fluid feeders. And then bulk feeders are going to be things that eat in bulk, like the name implies. So this is going to be things like large snakes, sharks, wolves, things that are consuming mass quantities all at a single time. Okay, next we have digestion. Digestion is the process of breaking down food into molecules small enough to be absorbed. So there's mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion are things that are moving to help the digestive process. So this involves your teeth, your tongue, and some valves inside your body called sphincters. Chemical digestion is going to be, the chemical breakdown of those food items. So this is going to be happening mostly in the stomach, but it also starts in the mouth. It starts in the mouth through the secretion of salivary glands. So that saliva that you are excreting inside of your mouth is actually helping kickstart the digestive process. Then once the food enters your stomach, gastric juice is going to be a mixture of substances, a lot of hydrochloric acid, doing some chemical digestion. The liver also secretes bile, and the bile is going to help with that digestive process as well. And then finally, the pancreas is going to finish it up through secretion of enzymes and like an alkaline type solution, so very basic, helping along the digestive process as well as the food enters the intestines and colon. So here, again, digestion starts in the mouth. It's going to form into this ball-like structure. If you can think about when you're chewing and you're starting to mash up all the food in your mouth, you kind of ball it up and swallow. Well, as soon as you have that ball of food in your mouth, in your throat, it's now called a bolus. So bolus is considered partially digested because you've gone through some mechanical digestion through your teeth and your tongue, breaking apart the food, but also a little bit of chemical digestion as well because you have your saliva there helping break down the material. You have an esophageal sphincter here that remains contracted until you're ready to swallow it down, and then it works its way past the sphincter, continuing down the throat until it enters the stomach for further chemical digestion. So again, just kind of piecing apart all of these different parts that are involved with the digestion. Tongue, teeth, helping out with that mechanical digestion. Salivary glands for chemical digestion at first. When it enters the stomach, you got a sphincter here also closing off the food exiting the stomach into the intestines. Chemical digestion occurring here, and our liver and pancreas also excreting some chemicals to help with the digestive process in the small and large intestines. Next, going into absorption. Absorption is the uptake of nutrients by body's cells. So the small intestine is also where the bulk of absorption of monomers is going to be taking place. So this is where things are going to be entering the bloodstream and will go to the liver for processing. The small intestine has a huge amount of surface area, approximately 300 square meters in humans, and absorption is always across a membrane surface. Therefore, surface area is extremely important. The more surface area, the more absorption that can happen. So here we have the small intestine. So we're zooming in to the small intestine, and you can kind of see these infolds, these folds, and this is all increasing the surface area within the small intestine. And even if you zoom even further in, so we're going to zoom into these villi. So villi are tiny little projections coming off of the intestinal wall. So here's a villi zoomed very, very close in. So our villi are even more infolded. So think about those folds that we saw here, lots and lots of folds. Now we're going into these individual villi, and even these villi are folded in, and all of this is increasing surface area. And you can see that the blood capillaries, so this is part of our circulatory system, those capillaries are extremely close to the surface of those villi, and so those nutrients are going to be able to pass. We're zooming in here, so this little square, zooming in, and so things are going to be able to pass through those cell walls and into the capillaries, into the bloodstream. So next we have elimination. So elimination is the passage of undigested material out of the digestive system. The cecum aids in breaking down plant matter. So the cecum has some excretions that help break down plant matter. And it's going to be located where the small and large intestines meet. So if you think about this logically, if the cecum is aiding in breaking down plant matter, then the cecum is going to be larger in herbivores and smaller in carnivores, and probably medium size for our omnivores. So the terminal part of the large intestines, that is your rectum, The rectum is the storage area for non-digested matter, aka feces or poop, prior to elimination. So here's the large intestines. This is the human large intestines, and this portion is the cecum. And here's our appendix. A lot of people have the appendix removed. So the large intestine, we have some different parts here. We have the ascending colon, so that ascending going upward. The transverse part of the colon. Transverse means it's going across. And then the descending colon going down. The sigmoid colon. Sigmoid, kind of like a little loop almost kind of shape, a curve shape. And then the rectum. So this is where the feces are going to be stored. So different types of digestive systems. So I just kind of started to hit at this when I was talking about the cecum. So carnivores, because meat is easily digested, it is very easily digested. The gastric system of carnivores is typically quite short and simple. So here I have two different diagrams, one of a deer and one of a fox, herbivore, carnivore. And you can see how vastly different the sizes of those digestive systems are. Our herbivore has a very large, complicated stomach with multiple parts, very large, small intestine, very large cecum, a spiral loop to increase the size of the intestine, and also a very long, large intestine. Contrasted with our carnivore, very short intestine, very small cecum, and a short, large intestine as well. So carnivores, they are monogastric. They have only one stomach. The reason why I point this out is because things like ruminants, like cows, they will have multiple chambers. So this is what we see here. So this is a deer. Deers are omnivores, and they also have multiple stomachs to help with plant digestion. Teeth of carnivores are very sharp and strong, easy to rip and tear meat from the bones of prey. When possible, meat is broken down further by the teeth to maximize the surface area for digestion enzymes in the stomach and small intestines. True carnivores do not have digestion enzymes in their saliva. So those are obligate carnivores, again, things like felines. Things like wolves, coyotes, foxes, the canines, they are not obligate carnivores. They predominantly eat meat, but they can also eat some grains and grasses as well. Okay, herbivores. Herbivores only consume plant material, which is extremely difficult to digest. Vertebrates cannot make enzymes capable of breaking down cellulose. As the diet includes large amounts of fiber, the digestive tract of herbivores is comparatively much longer than carnivores, so I kind of already went over that, due to the fiber being much more difficult to digest. To overcome the difficulty of digesting plant material, herbivores have developed a symbiotic relationship with a population of microflora. So those are microorganisms, bacteria, inhabiting the guts of our herbivores, allowing for the breakdown of plant material and cellulose. So they are going to be in the cecum or the rumen of these ruminants. Okay, so that wraps up animal nutrition, and we are going to start on animal reproduction next.